Hi, I'm Chuck Dorsett for Weaver Leathercraft, and this is the Leather Element. If you've got a good question for us or a good idea for a leather element, drop it in the comment box below. Perma-Lok Needles, the best invention in leathercraft since tanning. Now, I love edge lacing, it's beautiful, but I've done very little myself, mainly because the needles available, very frustrating. Perma-Lok cures every issue, but we're not just talking about edge lacing. There's all kinds of ways we can go with these needles. Also, there's one way here, kind of out of the box, we may not have thought of. But also, last point, if you've ever gotten a plug stuck in one of these, super easy fix, we're going to look at that as well. So let's do this. Let's start with the smallest needle, work our way up. Our first question is, what's a Perma-Lok needle? Well, in the old days, we have a split back needle. So what we're going to do is force that open. There we go. We've got two little teeth in there. We're going to do our best to try to get a piece of lace in there. Tough since we don't have three hands to hold that, to hold the needle, and to get the lace in there. Then we're going to squeeze that. Two little teeth in there are going to hold that piece of lace in there. Well, maybe. When we jump over to a Perma-Lok, what we've got is a threaded end. So therefore, we're going to cut a taper on our lace, and we're going to screw this on. You'll be surprised at how tight the bite is there. Now, for our smallest needle, this is for our top grain lace. Say we're going to do our edge lacing. Or, in one of my absolute favorites, our deer lace. And we've got all kinds of great samples here. Look how clean and tight that is. But also one of our project videos. Right there's our edge lace on our shop apron. So, lighter weights, maybe say our calf lace pro, or the best lace ever, expensive, but the best ever, kangaroo. All right, let's start right here. What we're going to do is cut a taper in the end of our lace. I'm going to cut that about 1/4 inch, maybe 3 inches long, 3/8 of an inch long. Let's take our needle, and I'm going to screw this right onto that taper. And in fact, as I get to the wider part of that lace, I can feel that get tight. That is a seriously good bond on that. Now, one more trick with these. We've got a flat on the end of our needle. So therefore, if I line the flat there with the flat of my lace, makes the whole thing easy. I can run that through my hands. I know exactly where my top grain is. The medium size is the one I tend to use most often. Number of reasons. First off, this is for our thicker leathers, like say our latigo, suede, or even the round lace. But also, if we're going to use a lighter weight, but a wider piece of lace. Over here, when we have to go through, I think this is 7 layers of leather, with a bend back, got a veg on the inside, the Perma-Lok makes that incredibly easy. Now, here's a good example. I make a lot of these small cinch pouches. In fact, we did a video on these. We can take our needle, load our lace. Look at that. I can lace something like that in a matter of seconds. Makes the whole thing much easier. On the largest needle. Now, I would like to say I don't use this very often. Well, actually I do, just not for lacing. We'll get back to that. But when we jump up to this, the best use here, say we're relacing a baseball glove, and we've got to make a long span, or we're using a much thicker lace, maybe 9, 10, 10 to 11 ounce, or even a much wider piece of lace. This is going to be a big help. But also, notice we've got 2 points here. We've got a flat point if we're going through a flat or elongated hole, and a round if we're simply going to go through a round hole. So like I said, I don't use these often, but we're going to look at a way where we can use these. When we're using a Perma-Lok, there are 2 problems we can encounter, but they're both easy to fix. First off, as we're lacing along, and this one's most common for me, as I'm lacing along with a long piece, say a larger piece, what can happen is my taper can start to soften, so my needle will keep popping off. Look at that as an example. It won't even work for me. Good needles. Let's back that off a little bit. Okay, as we're lacing, our needle keeps popping off. So let's do this. Let's take our needle off, cut the end, let's cut a new taper, screw this back on, and we're back in business, lacing right along. So let's tighten that down. Look at that, very nice. Good bite, I almost can't pull that off, okay? Second problem, and if this has ever happened to you, you're gonna go, don't do that, don't do that. But what can happen again as we're moving along, we can get a piece of lace stuck in the end of our Perma-Lok. Now, not a great close-up here, but you'll see where I'm going with this. What I'm going to do is take my craft knife with my longest, the longest taper. let's push that down into that piece of leather, and let's turn our Perma-Lok counterclockwise. So really what I'm doing is cutting into that lace, and that's just going to back that out very nicely. Look at that. Clean that hole easily. Now, one more thing. If we've got a really thick piece of leather, and it's not wanting to go in even with our taper, what we can do is take a skiver, and I can simply skive the end of that leather down. So I'm both getting a taper width and thickness. But one last point too, is as we're using our Perma-Lok, what I want to do is when I come through a hole, I don't want to use my Perma-Lok to pull the lace always. What I want to do is get that through the hole. Then let's move our hand from our needle down to our lace, and let's pull our lace through the hole. That's going to make the taper and the bite last longer. All right, let's take a quick look at 2 ways we can use this out and away from lacing. I love to add beads to my work. In fact, that really adds a nice touch. But sometimes it can be tough to get our beads loaded onto our lace. Now, if we're talking about pony beads or our largemouth metal beads, well, that's not really an issue. They slide right onto our lace. But when we jump up to a longer bead or a bit smaller diameter, or right here, the worst case, these are actual bone beads. The hole in these is never as clean as I would like. So I can take my Perma-Lok, that's going to run right through. How easy is that? But at the same time, if I want to do combinations, and I just want to see what these look like before I actually pull them down onto my lace, well, I can do that on my Perma-Lok. Then I can load the lace. Or if I've made a mistake or want to change that out, let's just pull that right back out. Now, we can go with our larger, and we can load multiple combinations on this before we ever pull that onto our lace. The problem is, it's a little bit larger diameter, so it's going to have to be a larger hole to use this. Now, one more. If we're going to make a necklace, and we're going to use our round lace, Perma-Lok right there, and just like a beading needle, we can actually use that to pick up our beads, slide it on. How easy is that? A little bit more obscure, but if you ever work with chainmail, the large needle with the round end is going to be a big help in 3 different ways. First off, I always start my first row with a line of closed links. So I can load links onto that needle. There we go. And in fact, on that, I could probably get 50 or 60 links on that. In fact, funny thing right here, I just keep a link on my main lace that I work with. Secondly, when I drop this off, I don't want to take this whole thing apart and unlace. So what I can do is simply let this slide off of this lace. I can take my long needle and I can run right up through that line. Look at that. How easy is that to run line through there? Or one more point, and I tend to use this quite often. Say I'm working down and I get to a certain row and I want to start on that row to taper or maybe start my dags. What I can do is run my Perma-Lok right through the middle of that. Look how easy that is. Now I've got a marked line ready to go. It's going to keep everything very symmetrical. If the Perma-Lok isn't the best invention in leather since tanning, well, you know what? It's running a close second. But here's the biggest point. Lacing is no longer frustrating. So let's drop in some edge lacing, or maybe drop some lacing in as a decoration. We're going to love it, and it's going to look good. Now, last point. This is going to sound like a sales pitch, but you'll see where I'm going with this. When you give us a call and you order your Perma-Loks, get 2 or 3. Here's why. You're going to lose one right off the bat. Just speaking from experience. So therefore, now I've got one in a backup if I like to use one, or I've got, say we're going to do the Mexican basket weave or Spanish basket weave. Well, now I've got a needle for both ends. I'm not short. And all told, we are never going to find that lost needle when we're ready to start a project. So I hope this is good information for you. Thanks for taking time to watch The Leather Element. Good luck with your projects.